No worries. All right. Good evening and welcome to the May meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council. My name is Peter Elford. I'm President of the Community Council, and we're joined this evening by other members of the Community Council, including Vice President and the Treasurer and a number of members of the Executive. But we're very fortunate to have with us Minister Chris Steele, Minister for, at least tonight, Transport, Roads and Active Travel. That doesn't mean we won't take the liberty to try some of your other portfolios out, but they're the ones we've asked the Minister to speak to tonight. This evening, I'll begin by giving a bit of an update on what the GCC has been up to in the past month. And before I do that, I'll just remind everybody who's here in person, if you could please sign in, that would be terrific. Remind everybody we are live streaming the event. The most important part of that is that if you do want to speak, please wait for us to get a microphone to you. We have a microphone that will amplify you in the room, and we have these little microphones here that will provide a feed to the Facebook crowd. And like all of our meetings, they're online on the Facebook site. Next slide, please, Dan. So as I mentioned, the agenda tonight is I'll try and give a short update. It'll be an attempt to give a short update because we had a bit on since the last meeting. Chris Steele, Minister for Transport, Roads and Active Travel, will provide an update on what's happening with the road and transport in Gungahlin. And then we'll have an update on the drone delivery service that's been in operation here in Gungahlin now for quite some time. And the Department of Infrastructure and Wing themselves will be speaking to some changes in how that's going. And then the team from the Thoroughbred Park, the Canberra Racing Club, will talk about their work to vary the territory plan some portions of that large site. So I'll just move on to the GCC update, please, Darren. And one more. So I guess the key update for the Community Council in the past month has been work in the area of planning. So I guess the anchor message here is that the planning system has been under a level of stress for some time. Next slide, please, Dan. In fact, as recently as about a month or two ago, during estimates, the Chief Planner acknowledged that the Planning Authority is almost forced to approve developments we know are not ideal and the community does not particularly want. So the planning system has been under some stress for some time, and there's nowhere in Canberra that has suffered that more than Gungahlin. There is a review of the territory planning system underway. We're well aware of that, but that's still got quite some time before that lands. So on the next slide. We, in the past 3 weeks, have called for the suspension of sales of land in the Gungahlin Town Centre. And that's been manifested in formal letters to the Minister for Planning, the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, the CEO of the Suburban Land Agency, and we've just recently launched on the 4th of May an ACT Assembly petition, and we thank Yirrabee MLA Andrew Braddock for his advocacy and support in that. So that's kind of the really short summary of what's happened. I'll talk a little bit about why we've done that on the next slide. And how do we get to the point where we're actually trying to stop the sale of land and giving up land that is an opportunity to provide actual value to the town centre. So we believe that the existing planning rules are not going to enable a viable town centre. The planning rules have already failed quite significantly. Most of you will be familiar with the precinct in the northwest corner, which is a number of high-rise residential units. This was described as an office park in the current precinct code, and clearly the precinct code, that planning document that controls what sort of things should happen where, has failed to deliver on that part. And we're now seeing in the eastern part of the town centre a whole bunch of mixed-use developments which are almost entirely residential with maybe one or two small commercial tenancies in the development or usually on the ground floor. And there are now proposed changes to the planning rules which ignore pretty strong and very consistent feedback from the community and are, as far as we can see, going to make things worse. So you'll notice here this ring around a box here called Precinct 2A used to be called the Office Core in the original precinct code from 2018. In a proposed amendment in a document called Draft Variation 364 says we're going to change that little rectangle from the core office and make that whole section of East Gungahlin mixed use living, which is more essentially mixed use developments, predominantly residential, which means that the entire character of the town centre will be dominated by residential. Now, the whole idea of a large amount of residential in the town centre is fine, but if we don't have the services that the community expects from a retail, employment and community service point of view, then it's not going to be much of a town centre. I've just come back today from Melbourne, where the Victorian government are desperately trying to get people who are working from home to come back to the city to create more activity in the centre and support businesses. And the situation is exactly the same in Gungahlin. We don't have that centre of employment that brings people in and gets people to linger in the town centre and make it viable. There's been no active effort to attract employment to the Gungahlin town centre. The only demonstrable action from the ACT government in the last decade has been the establishment of a new house, about 400 staff, mostly shared services. And that's been a terrific contribution to the town centre. But there's been nothing to make it easier for developers or potential tenants who might want to establish businesses, or the exploration of other options that might be, I don't know, a major retail centre or something else in the town centre. There's been no active effort to attract employment to the town centre or businesses to support that. Any land that's being sold now is being sold in a planning system that's not working great. This is not a new issue, and it's not a reflection that the community or Gungahlin Community Council are anti-development. We recognise the value the development community bring, and we'll get an example of that in a moment. And it's not a new issue. As recently as 2007, the planning minister at the time, a guy called Andrew Barr, is quoted in a Gungahlin Community Council newsletter saying there will never be any high-rise development in Gungahlin. So this is not a new issue, and if you go back far enough, it goes back to the early foundations of Gungahlin. But the key issues of why we are here today with the position we've taken, I hope are captured here, but there's a huge amount of detail behind all this. So next slide, please, Darren. So what we've done, and I apologise for the load of text here, but we've had fantastic support from Andrew Barrack, who's not only taken up the role of sponsorship of the petition, he's also taken our call and written it up as a motion in the Assembly. Now, unfortunately, the motion is currently adjourned. It's had strong support from the Greens and Liberals, both of those parties that come out in the media announcing their position. Adjourned state into a state where it can actually have some impact. In the meantime, we've met with, and this is, I have to acknowledge this, both the Minister Berry and John Dietz, the CEO of the SLA, have reached out proactively to us to meet with us and acknowledged the issues we were bringing to them and provided in writing a commitment to improve community engagement, particularly on the higher value sites that are in that core area right adjacent to the light rail line. And they have already made changes, even for the sale, the auction of 4 sites that went on today. They required design reviews for development applications on those sites. So there's some progress. On a really positive note, the petition that Hanley put together and was lodged by Andrew last Tuesday ticked over 500 signatories in less than a week. So we're very much encouraged by that. There's very, very, very strong community support for it. And we'd like to acknowledge the community coming back and saying, yep, I'm prepared to sign up to those. You are on the right track. On Tuesday, the Minister of Planning gave a speech in the Assembly, which I've loosely described as a statement, there's really nothing wrong, carry on. There was really nothing in it other than restatements of current activities, and to be honest, was somewhat disappointing. Now, having said all that, we called for the sale. We're disappointed the sale proceeded today. I understand from speaking to the media, and this is literally in the last 45 minutes, so it's breaking, and to the sales agent appointed to sell the sites by the SLA. 2 sites were sold to, the 2 biggest sites were sold to a developer here in Canberra known for traditional residential unit development. Core, I believe their name is. But interestingly, 2 other sites were sold to the Canberra Business and Technology College. We understand, or I understand, from the media that their intention is to establish or consolidate their campuses here in Canberra. They're a small training college here in Gungahlin. And if that is indeed what's happening, that is tremendous news and an unexpectedly positive outcome. But that's early days, so we'll see how we go. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of actions. Next slide is a terrible thing to look at, but what I'm trying to capture here is this is some of the specific actions. We're not just saying stop, we're trying to say do these things and we think will improve the process. When the original work done, initiated by the Community Council in 2016, was done by the community saying there's a problem, something called the Town Centre Planning Refresh was initiated and a quite reasonable consultation was held and a report called the Community Engagement Report was produced. And that document's pretty good and it says a whole bunch of things. Not all of them are related to design, a lot of them have to do with the amenity of the town centre and green space and active travel and other things. And all of those other value things have been left behind and some elements have been pulled out of that community engagement, slightly twisted and warped and turned into what was called a snapshot report, which then informed draft variation 364, which has got all these crazy changes to what can be built in the town centre and the mixed use changes I mentioned before. So we'd like to go back to that originally consultation and look at some of those things. Draft variation 364 has had a tortured history. It's taken an inordinate period of time to get to the final draft stage, and we are extremely unhappy with it. But fortunately, the Minister has decided to refer it to the Standing Committee on Planning and will be reviewed. Submissions are due on the 30th of June. Suzanne Orr raised a motion that was passed by the Assembly in the 12th of February, questioning where the Gungahlin Town Centre was going. Very strong support from both the Greens, our Green MLA, and the Liberal MLAs, Leanne Castley and Andrew and Michael Pedersen all spoke in support of this motion. And there's a number of issues there that speak to employment and mixed use. So the yellow things are all things that are part of our key call, but are also appear in Andrew's motion and or our petition. And so the petition goes on to say we need a clear statement of a piece of work being undertaken around assessing community facilities in Gungahlin. That looked to be a very lightweight assessment. We'd like a proper job done. We'd like to have a decent community forum and consultation that is ongoing rather than these lightweight spasmodic processes. And we'd like to understand the decisions in draft variation 364 where they're reducing the amount of space reserved for office or commercial space very significantly from 200,000 square metres down to 65,000 metres. Some of the rationale in that document is frankly laughable. So it would be good to see that addressed. Obviously develop a strategy to encourage business into the town centre. It's a common theme that keeps coming up and I've mentioned it. Better reporting and a single point of contact. A lot of the challenges people see actually span multiple government agencies. I was just chatting to the Minister about this. It's actually very hard sometimes for the average resident to actually know which agency is doing what. And so having a single point of contact in government who's responsible for everything that's happening in a place like the town centre would be great. So there's a lot of detail behind all of those, but we're not going to go into those tonight. Next slide, I think, just captures where are we up to. If you've not signed the petition, please do so. Very easy to find. You can go to the website or our web page, Facebook page, and you'll see lots of promotion of the petition. As I said, we're roaring up on 600. It's open until the end of June 30th as well. So if we can get 500, 600 a week until then, we'll be tapping on 2,000 or 3,000. So that'd be great. And also get in touch with your MLAs. Certainly the Community Council was calling prior to the election last year for MLAs to be more engaged and more accountable and more connected to their electorates. And I have to say, all of the MLAs since the October election here in Yerrabee have been fantastic on projects like the Yerrabee Ponds, the initiatives for motions, work Andrew's doing with us on this particular petition. the advocacy Leanne's had around the pool and other issues. You know, it's been really noticeably different. So I'd like to acknowledge that as well. All right, so that's the big news. I've been too long in this session, so I'll just quickly get on the only one other item I want to quickly touch on in the next slide. There's a very accelerated piece of work going on to get the Kenny High School up. There's been a couple of pre-DA estate and school design piece, and there's some thinking out about the roads, which at least is a reasonable segue to the next segment. There are a number of people who are concerned that the first stage of road construction to serve the new school, which is here, and there's also a new park and ride being constructed here. This is where the recycling facility is. This is Flemington Road. Concerned this is not a full duplication of Wells Station Drive. There's one resident who's very interested in this and has an extremely long list of quite well argued issues that have been raised about this, and points out that the traffic impact assessment in the estate development plan actually recommends that the Wells Station Drive be duplicated, but that's not what's being proposed. So some work to do on that, and they're looking, TCCS are looking for feedback on that particular piece of work. And it sort of goes to the challenge of dealing with government. All three of those bullet points are actually done by different agencies. The first one was EPSDD, the second one is the Education Department, the third one's TCCS. So trying to pull the full picture together is quite hard. All right. Any quick questions on those topics? That's really good because we haven't got time for them. But obviously any of the issues we've raised, we're very keen to have you give us some feedback on. Let us know if we've got it right or got it wrong. And there's quite a lot more material and a lot of discussion on Facebook, but a lot of material on our website as well. So without any further ado, I'll ask Minister Chris Steele to step to the stage and give us an update on the Gungahlin roads and traffic environment. Thanks very much, Chris. Click that one on, and that will get you to the online community.
Very good. I've got one of these myself.
And that will let you be booming your voice in the room.
Thank you, Peter, and I'll start by saying Notawa Wari, Dara Wari, Dindi, Wangara Linjin Yin. I acknowledge and pay my respects to the Ngunnawal elders. Thanks for having me tonight. It's great to have the opportunity to come along and speak with Gungahlin Community Council about the work of my Director in Transport Canberra and City Services in particular, but I'm happy to take questions on any of my portfolio areas here tonight. And to talk about a little bit about some of the projects, significant projects that are occurring in Gungahlin, where we're heading in the future, and there's quite a bit of work happening, as you'll soon see. The ACT government is monitoring growth in the Gungahlin area through strategic transport modelling. I might just ask with the clicker.
Yep, it's coming. No clicker, you'll just have to grunt.
Oh, okay, no worries.
Sorry.
I'll click to the next slide in that case. So we're closely monitoring the road network. I can hang on for a minute or if you like.
Okay.
Next slide if you can.
Yep, I can. It just made a mess of it. Bear with me a second.
Can you show it full screen?
No, I can. It would require me to be in control of my mouse. Can anyone quickly remember how to do this? Yeah. Where is it? Tool side. Sorry.
No, full screen mode.
Control L.
Just tell me where to go.
Oh, keep going down.
Down. Thank you.
Control L.
Control L.
Yeah.
There you go, you learn something every day. Control L for the future. So we're closely monitoring the traffic around Gungahlin, any congestion that's occurring, the extent of delay to road users, as well as how traffic can be improved as the region continues to grow. The Canberra Strategic Transport Model, also known as CSTM, predicts future travel demand across the network in 5 yearly forecasts. And it does so by taking into account land use projections like population growth, employment, shopping precincts and school enrolments, as well as proposed transport network improvements and future transport costs. Next slide. By 2031, the Gungahlin Town Centre is expected to have a population of 12,653 people. That's just the town centre itself. It's obviously much larger and will grow to around 100,000 for the whole of the Gungahlin region during that period. And by 2031, we suggest that Anthony Rolfe Avenue and surrounding arterial roads will be operating at near or capacity during the morning peak periods. And that's just an example of the strategic model there. Maybe a bit hard to see, but you can look back at the video later on. Next slide. The challenges brought by COVID-19 have had an enormous impact on the way that people choose to move around our city. At the height of the pandemic, we saw traffic volumes across the ACT plummet, and this saw roads like Gungahlin Drive carrying around 40% less people every day in vehicles. However, the impacts of the pandemic have been lasting and seen more people choose to drive their car as a result, and that's because less people are using public transport. And across the ACT, traffic volumes are now 3% higher than they were just prior to the pandemic occurring. As you can see here, for those commuting from Gungahlin, Horse Park Drive is now carrying 37% more traffic into the city every day compared to just the period before the pandemic, and Flemington Road is now carrying 41% more traffic away from the city. So significant increases. It's partially because of population growth. There's certainly been a bit of population growth during the pandemic period in Gungahlin, but it's mainly, we think, due to less people using public transport because of the COVID-safe health directions that have been in place for public transport and still continue to be in place, by the way, in terms of avoiding using public transport during peak hours. If you turn to the next slide, we can see sort of a more granular pattern in the town centre itself. So a significant number of key intersections are now carrying more vehicles in the town centre. Not all of them, some of them are down. And that is, again, because of the key cause of public transport patronage being down. So patronage fell off a cliff in early April 2020 and fell to actually 14% of what it was carrying in the previous year's number, and it is yet to fully recover. While we largely stayed at home to work, teach our kids, many journeys that were taken were done using a car, and this has created habits which continue, and they're very hard to break. Even as life has gradually started to return to normal, numbers across the public transport network have recovered significantly, particularly on light rail, but are still down. The ACT government will continue to follow health advice, but we're also conscious of the need to get people back onto public transport so that we are addressing congestion on our roads. Not suggesting everyone has to go onto public transport, but when people do, it actually benefits everyone on our road network, including those using private vehicles. Surveys undertaken by the Australian Bureau of Statistics just over the last month show that about 1/6 of people are reluctant to return to public transport in a post-pandemic world. So it is concerning, and it's one of the reasons why just over the last month I've released the ACT government's Transport Recovery Plan, which is aimed at trying to get people back on over a period of time to public transport, making sure that they've got the trust. I held a forum where we spoke to some public transport experts about what's happening around Australia and the world, and there's a similar trend occurring in other cities as well. So there's a range of measures in that, and I can talk to that later if you've got any questions, but it's available on our website, on Transport Canberra's website, and outlines a roadmap to try and get public transport patronage back. Next slide. So at the election, Labor committed to develop a mesoscopic model. So we were looking at the strategic model before. Mesoscopic model's a different type of model. It's an operational model that we can use to test improvements to the road network going forward. We've undertaken to develop this work. We think it will take around a year to do. We'll do it for the Gungahlin Town Centre. We've already undertaken and developed a mesoscopic model for the city, which we're using very successfully at the moment. It's a more detailed model than the strategic model. It will be a single source of truth when undertaking traffic impact assessments on development applications, as well as providing an accurate way for the government to assess the impacts of our own proposed infrastructure projects and investments in the transport network going forward. So it'll support better decision making on prioritisation of capital works and development intentions in Gungahlin. It's going to be an important model for not only traffic on our road networks, but also for active travel, so cycling and walking as well. The ACT government really understands the importance of active travel. Next slide. This is going to be critical. It's been critical during the pandemic. More people have been out walking, cycling, which is fantastic, and we want that to continue to make sure that people have better ways to get out and about, connect with public transport and other transport modes. And it was one of the key themes of the 2018 Gungahlin Town Centre Planning Refresh, which Peter mentioned before, which found strong support in the community to improve the walking and cycling network both within the town centre and connecting it with other places. And this included some specific recommendations for new connections between the town centre and other parts of Gungahlin, including Yerrabee Pond. We have undertaken to do a route planning study, which will have all of those recommendations from the master planners' inputs. So we'll be undertaking that hopefully over the next year, and we'll be consulting with the Gungahlin Community Council to understand what further improvements need to be made, particularly connections into the town centre. And it'll help improve access and connectivity by identifying potential changes to the structure and operation of the active travel network and connections with public transport, recommend what infrastructure projects we then need to take into design and construction, and also how it can complement the other travel modes. And Peter mentioned the new Park and Ride project, which is being constructed on Wells Station Drive at the moment as well. So the outcome of that study will be really important to then informing the projects that we take forward, and we're really looking forward to getting on with that work, and that includes pedestrian connections as well as across roads. We're also undertaking some significant work looking at the roads around Gungahlin, and we know how important it is to make sure that we've got safe connections for pedestrians on our road network, making sure that they're well designed, and making improvements as the Gungahlin town centre continues to grow. And I'm aware of a range of concerns that have been raised in the Gungahlin town centre. This is the active travel connections that were identified in the master plan, but I'll get you to go to the next slide. So recent improvements that we've made include to the road network in Gungahlin include no U-turn signage being erected on the corner of Flemington Road and Wizard Street due to traffic intersection issues that were happening there, to remind southbound motorists not to perform illegal U-turns. VMS boards have also been placed in the location to reiterate safe driving behaviours in that area. Traffic investigation was completed on the Gungahlin Place Efkapedes Street intersection in 2019. And a bus bay has since been relocated from this intersection to improve visibility, and new bus layovers were added in Gungahlin Place on the south side in December 2020. The driveway outside of Grease Monkey in Gungahlin Place is also being removed to increase the length of the bus stop there. We're doing work in the suburbs too. There's a traffic study on Kosciuszko Avenue in Palmerston, completed at the end of last year, with design of the recommended traffic calming measures currently underway, and this will include a speed limit reduction to 50 kilometres per hour. We're also undertaking studies to investigate what small-scale improvements can be done on specific intersections within the town centre that we've heard from the community are problematic, and those include Gungahlin Drive and Lexon Avenue, Gungahlin Drive, Kellaway Avenue, Anthony Rolfe Avenue, Manning Clark Crescent, Eves West Street, and Hinder Street, Ernest Kavanagh Street. So any improvements that can be made to these sites will be progressed over this year, and we'll keep you updated on exactly what improvements will be made. I'm keen to hear from you about other issues as well. In addition to these works, if you go to the next slide, the ACT government has been investing in a range of infrastructure works across the Gungahlin region. The duplication of Horsepark Drive, you'll be aware of, the second stage of the duplication of Gundaroo Drive, expanded the car park at Palmerston Shops, and recently opened the new nature play space at Yerrabee Pond last year. And Gungahlin has also benefited from, of course, light rail, which I took up here before. Of course, we're keen to see people get back on light rail, but we also need to improve the connections to light rail, so that's something that we're looking at going forward as well. The new Mitchell stop is under construction. Most of the sort of physical construction works have been completed. They're just doing the work to connect the light rail systems to the stop at the moment, and that'll take a couple of months. Light rail stage 2 is of course something we're working on as well, which will connect the line. So for people who particularly are working in the employment hubs around the Parliamentary Triangle and in Deakin and Woden, we'll be able to connect through in a single seat journey eventually from Gungahlin on light rail. So we're looking forward to that coming online, with the early works starting at the end of the year. There's more work to do, and we're getting on with a range of other important projects. And next slide, the Gundaroo, newly named Gundaroo Drive Stage 3 project, which is the significant road connection between Gungahlin and Belconnen. The duplication's underway there. It's happening in 2 stages. The second stage is the Owen Dixon Drive intersection. There'll be 6.4 kilometres of new on-road cycle lanes, an additional bus stop and safer underpasses and active travel connections on the road. So we're hoping that this duplication will make it a safer and quicker commute for those going into Belconnen from Gungahlin. And it's due to be completed around mid-2022 for the first stage, and then the remaining section, which is the mid-section block from Jacolba Crescent to Balban Drive, is due for completion in mid-2023. So it's still a fair bit of work to do, but that's a relatively recent snap of the work. Yerrabee Pond, we've had a fair bit of discussion in the Assembly about Yerrabee Pond recently, while we've undertaken recent work there, painting up the toilet block and putting in the new nature play. We know that there's been a lot of conversation in the community about further upgrades, and really pleased to see the establishment of the Friends of Yerrabee Pond group, and I understand Transport Canberra City and City Services met with them on the 7th of May already to start engaging with the group, which is fantastic. And we're keen to engage with Gungahlin Community Council as well going forward on Yerrabee Pond. The Labor Party brought forward, and a range of other parties brought forward, a commitment to upgrade Yerrabee Pond at the election. Our commitment was open, and we wanted to consult with the community, but we did include potential extra car parking as part of that commitment. Through the first budget in February, we've got 300,000 to start that work and be able to start delivering on some of the things that the community has asked us to do. And currently, the consultation is already open. So I understand there's been about 700 people that have completed the survey thus far on the Your Say website, and we're keen to hear from the community about what they'd like to see in improvements to Yerrabee Pond. It's a really important recreational hub for a really growing area, and we want to make sure it's as usable as possible. I know I've been down there a couple of times recently, and it is busy, really busy, which is great to see, but we need to make sure that it is meeting the needs of the community. And there's been a whole range of different things, from not just parking, but improved active travel connections around the lake, lighting, bins, all those sorts of things that have been raised. And we've been holding pop-ups as well on site, and there's some further information on the Your Say website about further opportunities to engage on that. So Gungahlin's continuing to grow, and I'll go to the next slide if that's all right. And there's some information just about the Your Say link there. Next slide, thanks. We know how important it is going forward as Gungahlin continues to grow that we consult with the community, and that's why we've been engaging. Well, I'm here tonight to listen to your views. I've touched on a whole range of different things that are going on, but there may be things that we're not aware of, and your local members are a good way to raise that. But I'm really happy to take any questions tonight and take down any feedback about issues. I've also got officials here from Transport Canberra City Services, including the Deputy Director General as well, Jim Corrigan. So thank you for having me tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Chris. Yep. First question from Prasad.
Good afternoon, Minister Christy Steele. The last election, there was a multicultural facility in Gungahlin announced by all the political parties. Could you please throw a light on what's happening?
Labor's election commitment was twofold. One, to provide a Gungahlin community centre for the use of the whole community, including the multicultural community, and so that work is progressing around the planning for that new community facility here. And then also Labor committed to a dedicated, large-scale, multicultural events venue, which will be located at EPIC, the exhibition park in Canberra. So just off Flemington Road, close to the light rail stop there. So that work is currently occurring as well. I'm responsible for EPIC in my role as Special Minister of State. And so there's a lot of planning work happening at the moment around the future of that site. The Chief Minister is responsible for the project, and we're really looking forward to making sure that we've got a space that's going to meet the needs of our larger communities that can't currently fit into a range of other community spaces around Gungahlin and other parts of Canberra as well. Many people will come from other parts of Canberra to that site on EPIC. So we're looking forward to progressing that project soon, because we know that there's a lot of events that have been cancelled, but there's a lot of ones that need to happen now because they've been postponed. So we look forward to engaging with the multicultural community in the design of that new facility. It's going to be important.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Good evening, Minister. Look, just recognising that stage 3 of Gundaroo Drive there, and that'll make good access for traffic coming up to Gungahlin all the way through from Belconnen. But recognising that the intersection at Mirabai and Gundaroo is where there's 2 avenues there that continue out onto Horse Park, which are both single lane. Can you confirm that the preferred route, if there was any duplication to occur, would be along Anthony Rolfe, because it's got greater facility for expansion?
So at the moment, the Gundaroo Stage 3 is the road formerly known as William Slim Drive.
Yep.
So that's the work that's happening at the moment. With the mesoscopic model, so the development of a traffic model for Gungahlin, that work is going to inform the future upgrades to roads in Gungahlin. So once we've got that work, we can look at what are the best interventions that we can make in the traffic network around Gungahlin that's going to give us the best impact in terms of traffic volumes and traffic flows, reducing congestion. So we'll look at those improvements, and that could mean duplication of further roads in Gungahlin. It could mean improvements to traffic lights. It could mean a whole range of different improvements around the place. So that's certainly Mirabai Drive is certainly on our list in terms of looking at how future duplication of that section plus interventions at some of the intersections along Mirabai Drive. That is part of what we need to look at, but we need the evidence before we then go embarking on the committing to infrastructure projects along that route. And of course, there's the bridge there on Mirabai Drive, which is tricky and is a constraint on the project. And then obviously other parts of Gundaroo Drive as well in the future, other parts of Horse Park Drive, Clary Hermes Drive, Gungahlin Drive. There's a whole range of different roads that we'll need to look at. Anuda Drive is another one where we have undertaken some work. So we've got to look at all of it, and one intervention on one road will affect another, and this model will show us what that impact is and give us a really strong evidence base. And it's one of the reasons why we're doing it early in the term, so that we've got that, so that we can get on with the work on the projects that are underpinned by that evidence.
Right. I guess my reason for asking is that the straight through route is Gundaroo out to Horse Park Drive.
Yep. But
that has facility on either side of it, including service roads, including residences that are very close to Gundaroo Drive. Yep. So my concern is for those residents that if that were to be duplicated, it would be right on their doorstep and would be undesirable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to consider what the impacts are on surrounding residents. And Peter had the plans up for the work that we're doing on Wells Station Drive to facilitate the new Kenny School. So the current consultation with residents is around, we know that the decibel level is going to be higher once the school's in, once the upgrades have been made to extend Albatross Crescent. So we're looking at, do we need to put in road noise barriers to reduce the noise impact? So there are things that we can do to reduce the noise, but certainly we know that residents are close. And also they want good connections across Gundaroo Drive to get to Yerrabee Pond as well, to use that recreational precinct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think Minister Steele's generated a level of interest and activity on Facebook. Darren's got a couple.
Yes, it's one of the things with we try and connect with as many people in the community as we can, and that's the reason why we do the Facebook broadcasts. So we've got some questions online. Mark Scarborough is asking about Horse Park Drive near Throsby. He says it backs up eastbound every morning and is requesting to see whether or not we can look at some traffic light sequencing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've recently done some Longlow's starting to face some of the issues that Gungahlin had at the start of the suburb. So we've recently actually undertaken some optimisation of the traffic lights in Longlow out of on Cotter Road, and that's resulted in some better traffic flows. So happy to look at those. We'll take some notes down about that particular intersection, see whether we can optimise the sequencing of the traffic lights and get better throughput.
Stephanie Fawkes, I would love to know when they plan to resurface Horse Park Drive. There's a lot of potholes that are along that route. I think I know what they're talking about here. So
yeah, Jeremy and Jim might have some further feedback on the program. We've got we've recently, the rain has been a problem in relation to potholes, and so even on sort of relatively new surfaces on Horse Park Drive, it has been a problem. The water gets under the road pavement, starts to erode the substructure of the pavement, and we have put in some surge funding, about $4.4 million to $4 million flat, into dealing with this issue. So they get patched up straight away once they're notified, and then we have to come and undertake some heavy patching. So that can take a little bit longer for the heavy patching to occur, and subject to weather. But we're doing that on an ongoing basis, and we'll continue to respond to that. The roads resurfacing program has really ramped up considerably in response to the rain. Just to give you a sense, we've had well over double the number of potholes that we usually have in an ordinary financial year. So.
there's one from Georgie Oven. Could you please ask Minister Steele if he knows about the issues with the pedestrian crossings in Casey? She's mentioning something about there's a discrepancy with the time that it takes to repair, and she says, also, do you think that 4 months is an acceptable time for it to sit with Fix My Street? And I think she says later on also about the fact that whether or not you're aware of the emails that she sent to you regarding this crossing issue.
And Transport Canberra and City Services are aware. I think they've attempted to get in contact with her. Work is prioritised largely based on safety and a range of different priorities that are often offered across the city. So we'll have a look at that specific one and come back to her.
The next one is just a comment. Melissa Turner, Gungahlin traffic is actually worse than Sydney traffic. I've experienced both, and the traffic flows with lights and signs, plus the abominable bad entrances to the limited car parks is making it a nightmare. So it's just a comment there.
Yeah, look, it's not. It is certainly significant, and it's got a lot worse as a result of COVID-19, and we're aware of that, and that's one of the reasons why we're undertaking this quite extensive modelling work to look at how we can improve things right across the network. Gungahlin is starting to reach the end of the development period, so there is still several thousand new residents to come in, but the last suburbs are being released, and we need to just work out what are the interventions we need to make now for the last stages of Gungahlin. Of course, light rail was meant to be a congestion busting tool, but if less people are catching light rail during COVID, that's a problem. So ultimately, better public transport is part of the answer, and we're keen to look at further improvements to the bus system going forward and making sure that those new suburbs are well connected as well.
Brad Miller was asking, can streetlights be installed in Vickers Street in Mitchell, please?
Yeah, so we've been working on a lot of this. There aren't a lot of streetlights in Mitchell, and it's one of the reasons why we were working with a solar provider to put solar lights on some of the bus stops in and around Mitchell because they weren't connected with electricity. We do have a street light in, and I'm meeting with the Mitchell traders soon to talk through a range of different issues. So happy to look into that.
Actually, just on the comment around we're finishing Gungahlin, we're acutely aware of that, and we certainly look around. We see that roads like Gungahlin Drive, Mirabai Drive, Horse Park Drive, Clary Hermes Drive, they're all, the bulk earthworks are already there and already been done. And clearly whoever was planning for Gungahlin planned for those to be duplicated. And, there's certainly, you don't need to model some of this. You just need to go out at between 8 and 9 and you can see that the segment, for example, of Gungahlin Drive between Gundaroo Drive and where Nichols and Ngunnawal are, it's extremely congested, and clearly there's space there for duplication. How much measurement do you do as opposed to modelling? Because you could just sit in your desk like all the people on the radio do and say, we can see the traffic's really busy, and they're just looking at Google traffic. So,
but you need to look at what the intervention will do to actually address the issue. And sometimes duplication doesn't actually result in a benefit. And so, absolutely, the planners have made sure that we've got really good road reserves where there are sort of unduplicated sections, so that in the future we can duplicate. That's even the case down in Tuggeranong still.
Yep.
So Athlon Drive in down my way in Tuggeranong has a very large road reserve for a future duplication. We're actually just getting on with that duplication work now in terms of detailed design. So that is a suburb that is very old, but has had sort of some natural growth over time, and we're looking at that. So we'll be looking at duplications as part of it, but it may not be duplications. There are other interventions that may be beneficial. That could include traffic light signalisation on particular intersections that require it. It could include dedicated bus lanes that might provide better public transport access and better pedestrian access across the Gungahlin region. So we're certainly aware of the need to do further investment. We wouldn't be developing the mesoscopic model if we didn't think further investment was required. But what we are at the point of is we need to make sure that what investments we do make maximise the benefits for the road network going forward.
Yeah, well, certainly understanding where you found problems and where you have them as priorities would be a useful thing for us to see. The question here?
Minister, I think talking about duplication, it's a good chance to discuss World Station Drive and Kenny High School, and the slide that Peter had up earlier with the proposed roadworks to support the new Kenny High School. Why is that proposal inconsistent with the traffic impact assessment, which recommended duplication of World Station Drive from Flemington Road to Albatross Crescent West?
The government has to make a range of difficult decisions, and one of the ones we've had to make in relation to this is that we need the road up and running by 2023 to support the new Kenny School. We're expecting students to start school in 2023, so we couldn't build the upgrades if it was duplicated by 2023. So we've made a decision to do this, but future-proof the design so that it can be duplicated quite easily. So the intersections that are being built along that stretch of Well Station Drive are future-proof for a duplication. They'll be the right width and everything, and we can come back and do the duplication at a later point in time. But we need to make sure that it actually fits in with the mesoscopic model. So that has to be developed over the next year. We want to make sure, is that the priority? Is Well Station Drive duplication actually the priority within the Gungahlin region for road upgrades, or is there another priority? Is it Mirabai Drive? Is it further extensions on Horsepark Drive with the new of the duplicated part of Horsepark Drive? So we've got to understand what priorities are, and that's why we're doing this work now. And we need to get that road, especially the Albatross Crescent extension, done to make sure that we can open the school. And everything that we'll be doing will be future-proofing it, ready for duplication. There's no doubt that we're aware of that recommendation, and it will be done at some point in time. It's just a question of when, and that's what we're working on at the moment.
Thank you.
How are we going, Darren? Anything sparkling online? Yep. Oh, one more to the in-person community.
Thank you, Chris, for coming down tonight.
No worries.
I was hoping to get some kind of stats from you, I think when Peter sent an email out about where's the accident point, where's the bottleneck, how are you going to handle it, what's the current state and what's going to be future state. We all understand there's a new suburb popping out, like pretty much. So we got a Taylor, which is not completed yet. Jacker, Part B needs to come up. Crosby is not filled yet. So many things, on the radar, but we can't even use Gungahlin Drive in the peak hours. It doesn't matter whether it's a COVID time or pre-COVID, it's always the same. Especially on the Barton Highway, the bridge, the Gungahlin Drive bridge.
Yes, yep.
That's an accident spot. I'm not sure what has been done so far to prevent it, but you can pretty much, I can bet every single day you can see something happens there. And I'm not sure whether you have any plans to address those kind of problem in your thing? And the other thing I want to mention here as well, the one thing what's happened, the SLA comes, Suburban Land Agency, they comes, build the suburbs, planning does something, and then they break the road, and then SLA will connect it, and then you guys comes and do it. So it's pretty much a lot of rework, wasting a lot of money. So I don't see what kind of traffic model you guys use, and is there available for public to see the data for the last few years?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I've shown you is from the traffic model, strategic model at the start, and then we've got to do the work on this operational model that will then inform the future works. There's no easy solution to the traffic problems that's obvious, and especially on Gungahlin Drive, right? Like there is grade separated interchanges there. All of those major roads like Flemington Road and Gungahlin Drive then go off, and of course Barton Highway onto Northbourne Avenue, if that's the way that people are heading. So that is tricky. There's going to be a bottleneck there, and there's no easy solutions, and that's why we're looking at a model that can tell us if we made this improvement, what would it do to the entire network? Because when people are congested in a congested area like Gungahlin Drive, they might choose to go another way. And so one intervention affects another road and another road and another road. So we need to have a look at how the whole system is working holistically to work out what the best interventions, and it could be a combination of different interventions at different points.
Do you think when this is going to happen, like when you're going to release this kind of plan? Because last time when we got someone from transport, they said, we didn't know these suburbs going to come up. We were like, really?
Well, a fair bit of work is done. Do you want to comment, Jim, just on the work that's done with SLA in terms of the future planning of roads and road infrastructure? But there is a fair bit of dialogue between the two agencies on what's happening. And yes, we do have a role in building some of the major arterial roads, whereas the SLA kind of just gets the basic sort of suburban local roads developed. So there's a fair bit of work that happens, and unfortunately when you're connecting roads up and so forth, sometimes there is a little bit of redundant work that happens, and that's just part of the nature of connecting roads and so forth. But
I think we would like to see is like, okay, these are the bottlenecks, so produce the list with the data, and then in 6 months, 8 month times, we done this, and then this has reduced this kind of thing. So that's what it's missing. So I think probably you might take that point.
I guess the thing is it's not quite that simple in the sense that some of the interventions may not reduce congestion at all. So we've got to look really closely at what interventions we do put in place, and maybe dealing with one bottleneck road isn't going to address the issue. It's the whole reason we're doing this piece of work is to do that, is to get a holistic view about where the congestion is and what improvements can be made on the various roads to address it. But public transport has to be part of the solution. Not everyone uses public transport. I'm not suggesting everyone has to, but when people do use it, when we encourage uptake of public transport, it benefits everyone on the road, because buses and light rail are much more efficient in moving people around. They take up much less road space, and so part of it could be an intervention to include a bus lane, for example. That takes cars off the broader road network. So
that's a good point. Sorry to hold you up, but I just want to connect you there, because we've been proposing for buses to connect the south of Canberra, like Tuggeranong and Warden, which has been completely ignored. When Megan was here, she promised we will at least do a trial, but when every time the transport people comes, we don't have a data to do it. But there won't be any data because people are not crazy to take go to city, and then you got to take multiple buses to go to Tuggeranong if you want to do it. So I think we should bring those trial options and see what's going to happen. The other thing as well, I will connect it. If at the pace of how Minister Gentleman selling the lands in Gungahlin, that's not going to help you either, because there's more residential things coming. So that's all going to impact what you guys are going to do. So I would probably, the transport is important as well as the planning is important. So if you're going to align with them, probably the solution,
the model will take into account the various growth of Gungahlin, and the work that was done on the traffic modelling around those particular blocks has shown that there actually won't be a significant increase in terms of the traffic in the network, a lot of those people, because they live in the town centre itself, hopefully will be using public transport because it is more transit-oriented development rather than sort of the outer suburbs. So in relation to the direct bus, look, it is something that I've heard about. So we have listened. We know that it's something you've put forward. The reason why it hasn't been done is because our network is based on a hub and spoke model. So we can't run a bus to every single thing everywhere. We run to hubs, and then from the hub you get into the... and so the transport corridors that have been identified in Canberra run from Gungahlin on Flemington Road and Northbourne Avenue down Adelaide Avenue to Woden, for example, if you're looking at a connection to Woden. And that's where we're building light rail, which is a form of mass transit, so we can get people efficiently on large numbers to those areas. So we've identified the transport corridors in the planning strategy, and so that's why we're building it out based on that strategy, and why we're not looking at sort of direct connections, which are difficult for us to do because we don't have enough buses to be able to deliver a direct connection to every single place, to every other single place.
Sorry to cut you, but every single suburb, every single district in Canberra, like say, for example, from Woden, they have access to city, right? From Woden, they can go to Tuggeranong. From Woden, they can go to Belconnen, okay? So the point I'm trying to make, we don't have that kind of connectivity. I think that's what missing.
And that's what we want to provide to Woden with light rail.
With light rail, it's going to be another 10 years wait.
It won't be 10 years, but
if you want to go to
we're
Tuggeranong,
starting work this year. So
if you're going to go to Tuggeranong, it's going to be 10 years.
But at the moment, you can catch the Black Rapid, what used to be called the Black Rapid, from Gungahlin to Belconnen, and then if you want to go down to Woden and catch the R4, it's a pretty quick connection.
You should try that one day, Chris.
All right, so we're going to, just conscious of time, just a few questions here. There was,
I'll ask a change of pace question. So there's some of the older suburbs in Gungahlin, Nichols, Ngunnawal, and Amaru, they have some green spaces, playground, children playground, which are very old, not maintained, looked after, they're falling apart, rotting. Is the government going to do something to look after them, revamp them, and so that because Ngunnawal, which used to be occupied by more older people, now it's getting a lot of young kids around there. So is there anything the government on plans?
Yeah, look, we regularly audit our play spaces to make sure that they're safe, and they are regularly maintained. So if there's concerns about that, please let me know about what the specifics are. We are looking at just consulting on a draft play space strategy very soon, which will look at strategically how do we manage our play spaces around the ACT, which ones we should focus on in terms of upgrades. We had a play space forum about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we brought the community together to actually talk about play spaces and what we need to do. And what they told us, so it was a deliberative democracy exercise, was that we should focus on some of the older play spaces that are like several decades old, like 50 years old, to try and improve those before we go into the newer areas. So there is a balance, and I'm interested to hear people's ideas about upgrading play spaces.
Adding on that, there's a particular one in Ngunnawal where I did a petition a couple of years ago to revamp it because it's been 30 years old and it's falling apart, and the community stepped in, redid the chairs, repainted something, but nothing has happened out of the petition either. But there was also a commitment from the Labor, the last election, saying that some of the playgrounds will be updated, but I wasn't sure if that's included or
Yeah, there were a range of playgrounds that we committed to at the election, and we're yet to go through our first proper budget in the term. So once we get through that, we can outline what and we'll do that in consultation with the community.
Is there a timeline on that?
So we committed to do it during this term, and we've got 4 budgets that we need to go through during the term, and that first one's in August. So we'll keep you updated. But if there's particular things that on other playgrounds that you'd like to see, we have done about 50 playground refreshes recently, where we've done new painting and so forth, improvements to the place, minor improvements to the play spaces. But if you're talking about larger improvements with new play space elements and that sort of thing, that's a much larger piece of work and requires significant additional funding. But we're looking at consulting with the community first on what they'd like to see across play spaces in the ACT, inclusive play spaces, fencing, shade sails, all of that sort of thing, and your input there would be good as well.
The ability to have cafes co-located with parks would be good.
Works well.
Thank you, Minister Steele, for coming. Now we've got some blocks that have been sold within the town centre. Approximately 400 plus apartments could potentially be built in there. What type of roads, you know, it's going to be chaos. It's already chaos in Gungahlin. Having more people move into these apartments, I think it's a bit wrong to think they're all going to take public transport. And are you going to have more light rail availability if they're going to take public transport?
Yeah, so we certainly think that when people move into these types of developments that are located, you know, very close to a light rail station, for example, that they're much more likely to use public transport, which is great. It's one of the reasons they move in the first place. But the road network will, of course, need to accommodate them. We think that it can. There's certainly some issues at the moment, and we're looking at how we can improve the intersections around Gungahlin, some of which are not signalised, improve pedestrian connections within the town centre itself for people, because they'll be walking quite a bit, I expect, if they're doing business around the town centre and living in the town centre. Future light rail frequency is a possibility. We increased the frequency to every 5 minutes from every 6 minutes in April last year, and that's made a big difference, particularly in the morning peak. And we've also extended the peaks to do those more frequent services later on in the evening as well. So that is certainly something we can look at. We build it in redundancy in light rail to actually have dual coupled light rail vehicles, so to double the capacity in the future if we really need to. So it's something that we can look at down the track. We're not quite there yet in terms of needing that extra capacity, but we've got to get people back on to use the existing services first, which is going to be a challenge.
Right, I'll make this the last one, I think.
Thanks, Minister Steele. I'm speaking on behalf of the Friends of Yerrabee Pond. We thank you for your acknowledgement, and we're very appreciative of the steps already being taken to bring to the fore such an initiative as your say. We're also encouraged by meeting one of your senior officers last Friday and pointing out some immediate concerns down there. But we look across the spectrum of all 5 MLAs supporting us in every way possible, and our dealings with yourselves is such that we are very much encouraged. Daily we are receiving offers of support for sponsorship of various things that we have in mind that we're putting forward that we'll share with you. Perhaps the major concern that people did express is the fact that in the fine print it says that the survey by your wouldn't be out till the end of 2021. Now, I understand through your office that that is being brought forward, which we feel is essential to have the full sphere of what people are saying. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to take that feedback on board, and we certainly know that we can do some things in the short term, and other things will be a longer term priority, and we need to work on costing up what it's going to cost. We've got 300,000, but I suspect that the suggestions to the community may go beyond that amount of money, which is fine. And things like bins and so forth are, you know, a relatively small cost. They have an ongoing cost because of the maintenance, but I know that's been raised as just one of the many issues there. We can also tap into other funding sources, and I'm sort of thinking about the tree planting program in that regard. We've got to plant 9,000 trees across the city this year as we ramp up to try and get our tree canopy cover up to 30%. Gungahlin needs to be a focus. I've heard from Mr Braddock on that one in terms of prioritising areas with lower canopy cover, so there's an opportunity to do some more planting around there, engage with the community and work on a range of other projects as time goes on. But I think part of the issue with the Yerrabee Pond is it's a relatively small space, and I think it's about using the space as best we can and working out exactly what needs to happen. I think I've been talking with Pedal Power about the difficulty of cycling around the lake with so many people enjoying it walking and that sort of thing. So there's been some discussion around separation and what can be done there as well. So been really fruitful discussions with the group, and I look forward to working with the Friends.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Darren tells me there's at least one urgent question.
Yeah,
online.
We've got a couple of questions online, and there's a request to see whether you can actually go back on to these questions and try and answer them, because there's a few of them that are really pressing here. One of them that is asked a fair bit here from Linda is in regards to the layover at Anthony Rolfe Avenue. The issue is the buses are running for half an hour at a time, and often a lot of the times, particularly in the evening and that sort of thing, they're leaving the buses running, and they're concerned about the carbon monoxide sort of issues and things like that. And apparently Linda has been really pushing hard to have somebody look at this, even right back to when Miss Fitzharris was the minister. So
Well, the ultimate solution here is we want to get rid of all of our diesel buses and CNG buses and replace them with battery electric buses, and we're actually in the market at the moment to buy 90 of them, and eventually we want to make sure every single bus is an electric bus. No tailpipe emissions, incredibly quiet, literally no sound, apart from the wheels on the road, but if they're stopped, definitely no sound. And that is the best way to improve customer experience as well, because we don't want people hanging around bus interchanges inhaling that dirty black diesel fume smoke that comes out the tailpipe. So that's a long-term solution, and we're going to start that transition immediately. But in the short term, we have been engaging with the bus drivers just to remind them to try and keep their buses only running on idle for about 5 minutes. So we can remind them again in relation to that, to make sure that they aren't causing noise issues or fumes, unnecessary fumes. But the reason they do it is to mainly because of the air conditioning and so forth as well, especially during the winter. So there is an element of just of driver comfort.
And the last question was, what are the details for the planning intersection improvements along Gungahlin Drive, Lexon and Callaway Avenue intersections? And this will be the last question online.
So that's what we're working through at the moment. I don't know whether you've got anything to add on those, but we will consult with the Gungahlin Community Council to let you know what we're planning. But that's actually that work to design those upgrades is underway. Yeah, so we'll continue to keep in touch as those are implemented.
Okay. All right. It's always it's always terrific to have a minister actually come out. All the ministers in the ACT government carry many portfolios, and if you had to go out every night on one portfolio to do one meeting, you'd have a lot of nights out. So
I'm happy to miss soccer training tonight, to be honest.
So we do appreciate you coming out. Certainly, we did flag the issue of accident hotspots and congestion points, and some of the details in the slides, but certainly understanding where there's people perceive there are a lot of accident points in the town centre. I'm pretty confident that's more than perception. Yep. So any data that you can provide after this meeting or perhaps in a future engagement would be much appreciated. Yep. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming up, and we look forward to a more regular engagement with the TCS.
Thanks a lot, Peter, and happy to meet with you at other times as well.
Thanks, Chris. All right, from traditional transportation, we move to perhaps new and innovative model of transportation. Wing have been operating a drone delivery service in the Gungahlin area for some time, and they have a whole bunch of regulatory permits to do so. Those permits are managed by the Department of Infrastructure, and I think Alicia is here to give us a bit of an update on some of the regulatory framework that and approvals that Wing have been operating under. And then I think Jessie Siskin from Wing is going to talk a little bit about how the community have helped Wing become a drone delivery company. So I have to carry, if you can clip.
Yep, sure. Just verified. Sorry.
And that one will get you for the room, so you don't need to burn.
Fantastic, thank you. All right. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Alicia Thornton. I'm a Senior Policy Officer at the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications, but I'm just going to refer to us as the department. I'm here today to discuss the updates to the Canberra noise approval for Wing Aviation to conduct drone operations in Canberra. The department administers the Aviation Navigation Aircraft Noise Regulations, so the noise regulations which are made under Section 26 of the Air Navigation 1920 Act. And they impose various requirements on drones engaging in certain kinds of air navigation. The department is the lead agency for the regulation of aviation noise in Australia, which includes drone noise. The department is responsible for approving drone operations and placing conditions on operators, including the frequency, time and location of operations. So that's the approval I'll be talking to today. The department consults with local governments and councils in relation to noise approvals within their jurisdiction to ensure community tolerance is maintained in relation to those drone operations. To this end, the department is in regular contact with the ACT government for the ACT approval and Logan City Council for the Queensland approval to discuss if noise complaints are received and to gauge the jurisdiction's perception and tolerance of drone operations. I would like to acknowledge that our approach to regulating and maintaining drone noise is still in its infancy. We're doing a lot of work to improve our approach to managing the issue as the sector grows and is a relatively new sector, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So I'm just going to do an overview of the Canberra approval, which has been recently updated. There are a few changes to the last approval, so I'll go through some of those. I'll take some questions, and if I can't answer technical questions on the operations, I'll hand over to Jesse and he can come up and assist with that. So just little technical issues. Sorry, nothing up here. The approval number is 2021 because it's a section 17 and it's number 2. It's effective from the 1st of April 2021 to the 30th of March 2022. It includes the suburbs of Crease, Franklin, Harrison, Palmerston, Mitchell in Gungahlin. All right, so the updated items in the new approval. So in this new approval, there have been an update to the days of operation. The previous approval did not allow for drone operations on Mondays. This new approval, however, allows operations across the 7 days a week during daylight hours for flexibility. Sorry, guys. All right, the biggest change for this approval is the change to caps. So the cap on the number of flights per day has been removed for noise approval due to what we believe is an increase in community tolerance demonstrated by the reduction of noise complaints. This goes to the increased efforts made by Wing and the community and the consultation they're doing to establish their operations following improvements in Wing's drone technology as well, quieter drones, and operations, the use of dynamic flight paths. Jesse can talk to them in more detail. Although this approval does not impose caps on the number of flights for each permitted delivery suburb, Wing will ensure that its operations remain within the bounds of community acceptance. If substantial complaints are received for a specific permitted suburb, the department may vary the approval and reinstate additional operating restrictions. Something else that has changed is the overflight. The new approval specifically states each flight must avoid overflight of a suburb other than a permitted delivery suburb, with the exception of the suburb in which the Wing site of flight origin and destination is located, wherever possible, and this is subject to meteorological and operational conditions. A couple of little tweaks in there are definitional changes. Outdated language and definitions were removed, such as the term early flyer program and early flyer suburbs, as the terms are redundant. We're not using those program terms anymore. And the definition and change of the test and validation flights are defined a little bit differently, and they can now extend further than the 600 metres from the Wing site, which was the case under the previous approval. In the new approval, test and validation flights can be permitted over delivery suburb flights, but reported in the monthly flight data. Additional new models of aircraft. So we know Wing have been working to make quieter drones, so we've allowed for that in the new approval. The new approval notes Wing may introduce new models of aircraft without requiring an update to the approval, providing some conditions are met. New models of aircraft may be used for test and validation flights if the department is notified at least 5 days in advance. The new models of aircraft may be used in general flight operations if formal noise measurements are provided to the department, also 5 days in advance. So with all of the changes to the approval, we're making sure that noise mitigation strategies are still in place. Changes to the approval are to encourage operators to continuously strive for improvements in reducing their noise impact. Wing do this through indirect means such as adjusting their operations, such as the use of dynamic flight paths and dispersing the noise across the area rather than localising it, and the community outreach that includes increasing community understanding of the operations that they do. However, they also do this through direct means and modifications to their aircraft. A big thing that we're still aware of is the continued complaints and handling reporting. Wing's complaints, the wording is as the previous approval and the current approval. Wing must document and report quarterly on the feedback that it and government agencies, including ACT Government Complaints and Access Canberra Services, received during the approval period, steps it has taken to respond to that feedback. Wing has reported all this data to the department in the required reports, and we also get complaints directly from the sources as well. Complaints management, how we manage these complaints. Noise complaints related to drones are challenging as they are often combined with issues such as privacy and environmental impacts, as well as personal opinions on drone use. As I said a bit earlier, we are the noise regulator, so in this piece of work it is the noise that we are addressing, but those complaints can be additional. If you have a noise complaint for drones, as a first step, we would encourage you to directly engage with the operator. In this case, if you're aware it's a wing drone, so talking to wing. If you feel your complaint is unresolved, you may then contact the department, and for complaints on safety, contact CASA, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Currently, as a number of jurisdictions have different roles and responsibilities when it comes to managing drone operations and related noise issues, there are many avenues to submit these drone complaints, and we do understand it is confusing. We are working to find a single point of contacting us with this, all drone complaints, whether it's noise, but that's working in progress at the moment. Unfortunately, resolving drone noise complaints can be challenging, as it means identifying and contacting the drone operator. Commercial operations can sometimes be identified based on the company's operating conditions, locations, and the design of their drone. However, for other drones, particularly recreational drones, it is extremely challenging to identify the drone operator. This can be the case when recreational drones are generic in appearance or the operator is out of view. There are also circumstances where you may hear a drone but not be able to even see the aircraft, let alone identify the operator. As technology advances in this sector, such developing unmanned traffic management systems and incorporating remote identification, it will become easier to identify the operator, the specific drone operator, and a noise complaint may be more easily understood in context of the situation, and a complaint can go directly towards them. However, until this technology is developed, drone noise complaints are noted and actioned as effectively as possible, referring relevant complaints to an operator if identified, to resolve and work through for consideration. Just to finish off the further work we are doing in the department in regards to these regulations, the department undertook a review of the regulations in 2019, which highlighted concerns for potential noise from drones and other emerging aviation technologies, such as electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, to negatively impact the community and recognise the need for policy and regulations to manage these impacts. Taking into account the feedback from this review, the department published a report in 2020, which included a number of recommendations, including the development of an interim framework to manage drone and longer-term noise policy framework to develop as part of the National Emerging Aviation Technologies Policy Framework. Sorry, all these acronyms. The department is currently developing an interim framework which will include clear but flexible processes to ensure that an approach to noise regulation is sustainable for operators, facilitates innovation in the industry and balances community needs. We are working with the Office of Best Practice Regulation to prepare a regulatory impact statement, which is due to be circulated for consultation on our website in the next few months. If you have any concerns or interest in drone noise, I would recommend looking at that and contributing to that process. The department also started work on the outcomes-based long-term framework. More details about this can be found in the National Emerging Aviation Technologies Policy Statement, which was released last Thursday and can be found on our website as well. So at this stage, I will open up to any questions. Or actually, Jesse, would you like to talk first and then...
Whatever's most helpful.
Does anyone have any questions at this stage? And then maybe I'll hand over to Jesse.
Yep, Kevin's got a question.
Sure.
So are you only concerned with noise? What about...
At this point, this is the approval I'm talking to, but I can certainly take a question, and if I need to refer to one of my colleagues, I can get back to you directly. Yeah.
So what about the impact on... We heard from down south that there was an impact on birds.
Yes. Okay.
Is the department doing any studies to see whether there is an impact on birds? Because that's not sort of the thing that you could complain about. It requires some sort of a study.
Fair enough. I might hand to Jesse on this one because I know Wing do the study on birds. In this approval, it doesn't touch on environmental issues, although we are considering them, especially as part of the national, we're calling it the NEED policy statement. So as I said, it was released last Thursday. It does touch on environmental studies and we're interested in them. This approval, however, doesn't talk to them. But yes, very important.
Okay. Right. Well, Andrew.
Just wanted to check, is the only metric you have of measuring community tolerance of the noise is literally the number of complaints?
We make sure we're going out, like, we're trying to come to meetings like this and getting feedback. We do get feedback which isn't complaints, but changing approvals would be on the complaints numbers, yes.
But do you also require the drone operator to provide noise, testing results for the actual noise measured?
Yes,
It's not purely on complaints.
Yes, sorry. So the aircraft that Wing are flying at the moment, being our only commercial operator in Australia, do have the noise testing results that they have to send to us so we can see how noisy the plane is. They test it in all ranges of environments, whether overflight and in the house. And yeah, we use that metric as well.
Well, quick question over here.
Are you operating at the moment? Wing?
Operating?
Drop? Yeah. Are you operating?
Alicia's with the Department of Infrastructure.
Oh, sorry.
Jesse's wing.
Yep.
We've been operating for 2 years, yes, sir.
I've never heard you.
Which suburb are you in?
So,
Oh, well, they don't fly to Ngunnawal.
No, they're not in Ngunnawal at the moment.
So, the quick list of suburbs are essentially suburbs that can be reached by flying from Mitchell without flying over another suburb.
Yeah,
So-
I can
sorry.
list the suburbs again if you would like to hear them, if that would be helpful. Or I might let Jesse talk about them
Yeah,
in a
right.
moment.
We'll come back. Well, a quick
Yep.
question here and then we'll get Jesse up.
Sorry.
Just a quick question to follow up the one about measuring complaints.
Yep.
Do you have anything with you that roughly gives us an idea of how much the complaints have dropped that led to this review of the noise regulations?
Yep, so I've got a couple of numbers in front of me. So summary of the complaints. So we have, actually I'm going to pull it straight off our website because we do report this on our website if you're interested in following it, and we do update it as we get updated reports. So in ACT from 1 January 2020 to 13 January 2020, we had one noise complaint feedback from a Grace resident, one in Franklin, 6 in Harrison, 3 in Palmerston, and there were additional 3 just general feedback submissions. So I should have done my maths quickly. 1, 2, 8, 11. 11 in 2020. Yep. And that's in comparison to quite a number of flights. I don't have flight numbers in front of me and I wouldn't necessarily say them, but the number of flights that Wing are doing now, the complaints are quite low. Yep. Yep.
All right. Darren's got a question. So, Jesse, why don't you step up and steal the microphone from Alicia and we'll get
And
you
I'll
up.
still be available for questions. Hopefully Wing will be able to fill in any blanks for me.
So there's actually well, I guess my question was, we did actually, as the Gungahlin Community Council, actually meet with some people from Infrastructure Australia and also from CASA.
Yep.
And I don't know whether people are aware of this, but there seemed to be a special division within there of people that were working with Wing, and they seem to actually know a lot about the drones. So it appears that you have a sort of a special division of people that are actually know the inner workings of the drones, and they seem to know all of the algorithms that are programmed into the drones. So can you touch on that at all in regards to the fact that you do have that level of access to the drones?
So we work quite closely with the operators, and again at this stage it is just Wing. We've got a drones branch in both CASA that are doing the RPA side and one in the department. I myself, again, working on noise, but we have a team that are doing the whole government policy on emerging aviation and emerging aviation technology, and the policy is putting forward. Personally, I don't know too much about the whole technology working of the drones, Wing drones in particular. I know the basics, how it works, and I get the noise measurements that I can read about. However, we do try and be experts in our field to make sure we know what we're talking about when we're trying to form these policies and work out what's happening on the ground. So hopefully that gives you some confidence.
Some of the questions of privacy, for example,
Yep.
Wing have already addressed about the fact that they don't have regular type of cameras on their drones, and the fact is they're autonomous. They don't actually have somebody sitting behind a screen sort of watching the video as they're flying across, and sometimes I feel that it's not actually communicated those sort of concerns within the community, that's all, from the government to sort of say, well, hey, we're actually talking about two different things here. They're actually two very different technologies, and wondering whether or not the community really understands the difference between those, that's all.
We find that that is the operator's commercial information to share necessarily. We would like to be able to refute any excessive claims made if necessary. I mean, it is helpful that we've got Wing here and we kind of can present one after each other to talk about some of those things. I myself wouldn't go into the specific of a drone model, especially if we get more operators. But yes, that's what we kind of hope to do, have one after the other to talk to those different levels of technical knowledge.
And I have to say, have you actually heard their new drone?
I have, yes. I got to go out the first time and listen to it. So yes, we've got A and B and using the lingo now.
What did you think? It was pretty dramatic difference in noise.
Yes, yes. So I do have to admit to all of you, I am not a North Sider, I'm a South Sider. So I don't get it all the time. But yes, that was very exciting to hear. Yep.
We have an online for Wing when they're ready. So here's another question.
Cool.
So we'll just get. Thank you, Alicia. That's great.
Clip for the moment.
Yeah. Unclip and put Jessie on, and that leaves me with one to run around with. So, yeah. Beautiful.
Great.
Right,
Thank you.
yeah. So just quickly, Jessie will be well known to most of the online and some of the in-room audience. Jessie's government affairs.
Yeah, public policy.
Public
community
policy.
affairs,
A long story behind that type. But public affairs with Wing and has been on the Wing journey since its early inception and early trials. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Peter, and I appreciate the GCC affording me the opportunity to speak again. They've always been open to having me answer questions and meet, so grateful for that and grateful for your time. As Peter had mentioned, we've been operating now from Mitchell into a number of suburbs in Gungahlin for over 2 years. One of those years fell during COVID-19, which kind of radically shifted the number of customers, the number of deliveries we were doing as people found themselves working from home and schooling from home. And even as some of those restrictions were eased, we found that that growth has really sustained. So when people were first locked down at the very beginning of the pandemic, we were delivering things like power boards as people were opening offices or Panadol or whatever it might be. But we did see, so we saw a really big increase in the number of people using the service. We saw the type of customer change quite a bit too. So when we first started 2 years ago, we were pretty popular with working families with 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. And we started to see a shift where we started to see our customer profile change a bit to include those without children at home or who were more elderly, as they weren't going out as much. As we've always said, I think from the first time we presented here and over the years we've been here, we do take the feedback, regardless of the amount. We do pay very close attention to it. We want to offer a service that our customers find exciting and useful to have. We want to find a service that the businesses we deliver for find helpful, but we want to operate in a way that the larger community also finds acceptable. So even in periods where feedback might be low, we do pay very close attention to it. And part of that feedback, and some of the feedback that was referenced by the department, people had referenced the overflight, the noise they heard during overflight, and specifically the pitch of the noise during that overflight. So we went back to our engineering team. Some are based here, they hear the noise, some live in the communities we deliver in. We have teams in the US too working on this, and we redeveloped and reconfigured our drone to reduce the noise during overflight. I'd invited the entire executive team at the GCC to come hear this. Darren was able to hear attend that demo. I'll schedule more of these so others can as well. From a pure numbers basis, it is a significant change. The dominant frequency or pitch is reduced by half. The sound, the decibel level is reduced by almost half if you're on the ground to hear it. And for the measurements we did in homes in our delivery areas in Gungahlin, they couldn't pick up the drone noise when measuring it when inside a house. So we've started to slowly roll that aircraft out now in the delivery suburbs we're in. We'll continue to deploy that aircraft. We really do welcome the feedback. Specific feedback is helpful. It really does drive how we operate and the types of changes we look to make based on that feedback. And although we don't break out specific delivery numbers by region, I can tell you that between our two sites, our one in here in Mitchell and our one in Logan, we're doing thousands of deliveries every week. We have thousands of customers, so it's being used at a rapid pace. So if people, any piece of feedback we do take seriously. The numbers we take as a sign that we're on the right track, that these improvements will be helpful, and we only want to grow in a way that the community would find helpful and acceptable. So the reason we haven't, each time we add a new suburb, we tend to do outreach first. That's a little more difficult during COVID, but as restrictions are easing, you'll see us doing pop-ups again. We always have a representative of this meeting to get feedback in person. And I think what you'll see in the next few weeks with this drone, we'll start to do outreach to not all of Canberra, not even all of the north side of Canberra, but to other suburbs in Gungahlin to start to take temperature. We've had hundreds of people sign up in individual suburbs. We do see a lot of people who request the use of the service. We don't want to grow so fast or grow in a way that the community wouldn't be able to give us feedback along the way. So you can look for us. We'll have another 6 pop-ups scheduled in the Gungahlin area. We'll keep doing these demos. We'll keep taking the feedback. I'll happy to answer questions now, take that feedback now, or we'll continue to make sure our team is in person in the community to take feedback. And we do look forward to rolling out this Warm Quiet drone. It's a really significant change that we hope for some who have found the drone's noisy, that this will be a significant change that hopefully they'll be okay with. Yep. But again, welcome the feedback and any questions.
That's great, thank you. A quick question, partly online and partly out of the discussions we had with the department's reaching out to us as kind of like a local council to feedback along with Logan Council. And I know when they were saying, well, we were looking at these changes to the operating conditions, and one of them was considering other suburbs, some of which weren't in Gungahlin but can be reached from Mitchell without overflowing another suburb. Do you have a list of suburbs that you are actively canvassing, both here in Gungahlin and elsewhere?
I don't. What I'd say in Gungahlin, we get a lot of people signing up for service in Gungahlin, whether they're in our delivery area or not. So we have a set of people showing interest, enough to show that we think we have an idea of where people would find this helpful and useful because they've indicated to us they will. Before we start saying that, we want to go to those suburbs, have conversations. We'll put direct mail out so people know the way to contact us. We'll do those pop-ups. I would say in the next few weeks and months, we'll have more on that for sure. But our focus right now is, we've done really well when we add suburbs adjacent to the ones we operate in, because people are familiar, they're at least familiar with the company. If they see a drone flying, we hope they know it's ours, right? So, and they know who they could go to if they have a complaint or a question. So we like operating where people have a level of familiarity with us. And we'll focus on some of those neighboring suburbs to the ones we're in. We're not looking at this time to go beyond, outside of that Gungahlin area. Eventually, if this new drone is, largely accepted by the community and things are going well, we might look at that. But we're not in a rush to fly to every single place we can at this point.
Cool. All right. There's a question over here. I'll come back to that.
Yep, we've added. So the answer is yes. We recently added sushi as an example from Sushi Hub as a food option. We do have a few new hot food operators who have shown interest. We have only so much capacity to deliver, right? So we take merchants on, but sometimes we rotate them through. So we just wrapped up, a couple of month stretch with Walk It Up, and now we've welcomed in sushi. So we'll continue. We welcome the feedback. A lot of what we deliver isn't what we think people want. It's what people tell us they'd like delivered. So. We welcome the feedback. If people have specific ideas, we're open to that. And if businesses are interested in working with us, we're open to hearing that as well.
Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess dynamic flight paths is a term that you use to make sure that a drone doesn't fly exactly the same path every time. Could you talk a little bit about dynamic flight paths and what they are and what that means?
So that's essentially right. When we're flying, say if we're delivering to your house in Crace, we'll take one route out. We'll take a different route back. And we learned that over time and just getting feedback from the community and we found over the past 2 years operating here that method has been largely successful. I know for some people they don't appreciate that, but we found from the feedback we're getting, dispersing that, even though more people might notice or hear our operations, when they hear it, just a few, they hear it less, that seems okay. With this newer, we'll continue that, by the way. So it would be certainly easier and quicker for us to fly direct and fly back. but we do find by dispersing that routing, it's helpful. If you have a lot of homes on the same street that order delivery, sometimes that's harder to do. We did see during the pandemic sometimes a house on a street with 10 homes, the first one would sign up, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So sometimes we do monitor that, I should say. So if we have customers who are, most of our customers are ordering once or twice a week. The novelty after being in these suburbs for 2 years, I think the novelty of getting something by drone is, it's become more normal, it's less novel, and I think people are ordering as they need things or find it helpful versus, oh, this would be interesting to try out. So we've seen the volume be more regular and steady versus, somebody ordering multiple times in a day, right, just because they have that option. We see people ordering as they find it useful and helpful. So the dynamic piece, the dynamic routing, we found largely to be successful over the past 2 years, but we do take feedback on that. Sometimes we get that wrong, and this is why we encourage the feedback. It's important the feedback goes to the community council, the department, to the ACT. That way the department has an independent validation that we submit very detailed reports. We're very accurate in what we do, but we find it helpful, if I check in with Peter every few months to ensure that the feedback he's getting matches up somewhat with mine, right? Also to make sure we're not missing a part of the community that might not know to reach out to us or vice versa. So we do look for patterns and feedback and things like that, and that's why we do welcome the feedback and specific feedback. If people tell us, they're in a particular suburb or part of the suburb, and we get a lot of feedback from one area, we can look at that routing and say, okay, maybe we need to tweak that, how it's dispersed. We haven't had to do that too much.
I'll do that.
Okay, no, please do, yeah.
I'm a customer, by the way, as well.
Okay.
But yeah, certainly where I live, there's definitely an issue with consistent flight paths being used for sure.
Yeah, well, we're happy. This is part of why we come to these meetings. It's helpful to hear that. Thank you.
All right, we are very tight, late for time, so I'm sort of conscious if there are no more burning issues here or anything online, we might just wrap ourselves up so we can get on to the next one. No, all right. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Jesse. For the ongoing engagement, it is an exciting new thing. It's actually quite comforting to see that the whole process has evolved. It's still not perfect, like you say, for all aspects of things like privacy and the point Darren made, but it has got better. Generally, we try not to do operational things like take problem reports, but if people accidentally come to us or they don't get satisfaction through Access Canberra, then that's when it percolates to us and we then throw it to everyone else again. So,
and sorry, to be clear, we check with Access Canberra too, but hearing, sometimes this group is more in the community than Access Canberra, so that's helpful.
Right,
Thanks.
but thank you again.
Great, thanks,
Cheers,
Peter.
Guys. All right. So our last session this evening, and sorry for delay, we just had a lot of meaty stuff up front. The team from Planet will be talking about the work that the Canberra Racing Club have been doing at their Thoroughbred Park site. They've been here once before, you'll tell me when? February, and talked about the overall plan to essentially redevelop a portion of the very large site the racecourse is on for a range of mostly residential uses. So it'll be very interesting to see what's changed and why in this update. So is it you, Kip? Andrew? Oh, Kip, sorry.
We're going to co-present.
Okay, well, I'll get you to clip that on, and I'll get your slides up in 10 seconds. And the magic talking stick will make you big in the room.
Thank you very much. While we're just loading our presentation, my name's Andrew Clark. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Canberra Racing Club. I'm here to talk to you tonight about our redevelopment. As was mentioned in the intro here, we were here in February to give you an outline of what we were looking at doing, to obtain feedback, go away and do our studies and come back. We've done our initial studies, so we want to present to you what they've found and now what we're looking to do and do differently. My colleague Kip from Planet will also present on the detail of that as we progress through. Next slide. And again. So as was mentioned, we're looking at a process to vary our territory plan. That's an opportunity for us to make use of our underutilised land to both improve our facilities but also create better equine welfare opportunities for our horses. We've been on our current site since the early 1960s. The last major development for our facilities for patrons was basically when the Queen came in 1988. So the site is in desperate need of some refurbishment of its facilities. Similarly, equine science has come a long way since the early 60s when the stables were built. So there's opportunities there as well to invest and create better outcomes for the horses. And also, as well, it improves the outcome for the community. There was discussion tonight on facilities for multicultural events. We hold a number of events. Prior to COVID, 100,000 people would come through our doors on an annual basis. So improving our facilities also improves our outcomes for the community and opens up our doors for a better patron experience. We are, of course, learning from what's happened throughout the country with racing clubs generally. A racing club, by its very nature, sits on a large parcel of land. If you can see there with Eagle Farm, the centre of Eagle Farm Racecourse has been modernised to include all their stabling. Once again, that's a huge challenge for racing clubs as to what to do with that centre. We're following a similar trend, whereby if we move our stabling from where it is currently into the centre, it does free up a large portion of land that we can develop and give back to the community. Next one. Similarly at Moody Valley in Melbourne, they're also going through the process as we speak now. They're modernising their entire facilities, looking at new grandstands and what they can provide for the community. We're not looking at a new grandstand like what they've mentioned there. Ours is more a refurbished style approach to use the existing shell and make better use of it going forward. So as I said, we were here in February. We've done a number of different consultations. I've been out and about on radio, talking to Riot Act and at various other community council groups. We've had a drop-in session, an online session. We've heard the community's views. I'm very keen to hear what people in this room have got to say as well. And of course, hear your questions at the end. We've gone away and we've done our reports that we need to do. And we're planning to present this TPV prior to the end of this financial year, which we're on track to do. If we keep going. So that's a snapshot there of all the different reports that we've done. One that's common for tonight is the traffic and transport assessment. We've done our own as to the impact that would create from releasing large parcels for commercial and residential development at Thoroughbred Park. It's a point that's well situated with 2 light rail stops. It's close to those opportunities, and we're also looking for active transport, which was mentioned again tonight, to get people onto those light rail stops. I might at this point hand over to Kip, who'll go through the detail of what those studies have found, and then I'll look forward to your feedback.
All right, I'll just step through here to catch up with the screen. If we just talk through the studies that have been done relatively briefly, and obviously have opportunity for answering questions at the end. From an ecological point of view, really the site has been intensely used for a very long time, and there's not a huge amount of ecological value on the site. Sort of in terms of planning future use, it's not seen as a constraint. There's a lot of trees on the site, but the trees normally get talked about in terms of exceptional value, high value, medium and poor value trees. There's no exceptional value trees. There's a few high value trees which are providing some sort of landscape value, and then most of the trees are being rated as sort of medium and poor quality. And from a cultural and heritage point of view, our consultants have been out there, and again, because the site's been so heavily developed and utilised in the past, there's not a lot of sort of residual value in that space. From an infrastructure point of view, the engineers have looked at the sort of servicing capacity and the sort of concept scheme that you saw last time is readily serviceable from most of the infrastructure side of things. Hydrology and stormwater is something which is needing to be managed to some extent with Sullivan's Creek along the sort of southeastern side of the site. When modelling the channel which is down there at the moment, depending on the sort of future assumptions around climate change and the change in stormwater regime that's going to come with that, we're needing to set sort of minimum floor levels in a couple of spots on the site to make sure that we're working around possible future flood scenarios. But it's not a big issue for the site. The site sort of slopes up away from the creek, and so it's quite readily manageable. In terms of traffic and transport, we've done the base case modelling for the site, and there's still a little bit of work to be done backwards and forwards with TCCS to get the kind of the detailed predictions for future and traffic generation rates agreed, and how that's going to go. Obviously, the conversation around future transport, when we're looking sort of 10, 20 years into the future, the expectation is that not everyone's going to be driving to go and pick up their pizzas anymore. Going to be coming by drone, but also obviously the site is very well connected to the city with the light rail, and so our expectation for mode share on this site will be very much skewed towards active transport and public transport and other opportunities. So in terms of noise, that's another one that we fielded quite a few questions from the community about as well. And the club obviously has done noise modelling and noise assessments internally on the site to make sure that from a infill residential development adjacent to the track isn't going to curtail the activities of the club themselves. They're planning on being there for the long term. And really, the noisiest thing on the site at the moment is the PA system, which is very easily upgraded and fixed so that it actually sends the noise to the crowd rather than just blaring it out into space, sort of thing. So from an internal noise perspective, we again believe that that's quite readily managed. The conversations with Epic to some extent are still ongoing, but again, we're talking about some sort of planning strategies to mitigate the risks of the site curtailing the activities that can occur on Epic, because obviously Epic's a pretty important asset to the community, and everybody wants to make sure that continues to be able to operate. And light and odour, again, it's not a nighttime facility. Light's not a big emitter of light. We fielded some questions from the community about odour, with the potential for the just obviously there's a lot of horses there, but Rowan, one of our colleagues, has been talking to some of the other race courses about their management regimes, and they've really worked out ways to manage that, just in terms of daily pickups, and just if it's proactively managed, it's not a problem. And site contamination, just making sure that the site's not doesn't have residual contaminations from earlier land uses and those sorts of things, and there's been nothing really identified as a constraint. On the next slide, there's a list of the community consultation that happened in the sort of first round. I think Andrew pretty much described all of that. I think just in terms of presentations to members, community councils, providing drop-in sessions, some letterbox drops of postcards to make sure that people in the nearby area know what's going on. And there's continuously been information available on the website, an opportunity for people to sort of register an interest in the project. So, if we go to the next slide, some of the key community issues, questions about car parking, particularly on event days, and again, that's an issue which the club wants to look after and manage. So there's the concept plan includes race day parking, overflow parking in the middle of the track. The question about horse welfare, which is one of the driving issues for the entire project. The questions about contamination of Sullivan's Creek or stormwater management. Again, obviously our engineers have been looking at stormwater management from a flooding point of view, but also stormwater management on site, and the ability to capture stormwater on site to both clean it as necessary, but also harvest it and reuse it on site. The club's a user of water, so the opportunity to sort of close that circle is being investigated. I've already talked about flood risking and hydrology stuff. the questions about impacts on future events, we talked about that and talked about the noise and the interactions with EPIC and the ongoing conversations we're having with EPIC about how they manage their noise on site and the sort of levels of noise they generate and how we can work around that. And there was a general sense that given the government's strategic planning direction, looking for sites for urban infill in Canberra, we kind of got the feeling there was a general acceptance that this would be not a bad place to do more of it. We actually got one submission suggesting that the whole site should be used for infill development, but that's obviously it's Thoroughbred Park, and not planning to go anywhere for a while yet. So, so we have a precinct plan, which is it looks very similar to the one that was displayed at the February meeting. The studies that have been done haven't really driven the need for substantial changes. You'll notice the location of the water ponds that are shown on there has moved around a little bit. That's really reflecting the lowest points, having the stormwater go to the lowest points in the site. And so that's that. If we skip to the next slide, this probably represents one of the bigger changes that we've made to what's sort of being proposed, and that is in terms of the land use zoning on the site. We were previously showing a mix of commercial and residential uses, but what we're showing here is that the centre part of the site is not changing its zone, it's remaining as it is, and it's remaining Thoroughbred Park. The sort of northern corner of the site, which fronts onto Flemington Road, we were showing that as a commercial area. We're showing it as a commercial area now. The remainder of the site, we're showing it as a commercial area. And this pale blue is the CZ5 zoning, which is a mixed-use commercial zone, which is the same zone that gets used along Northbourne Avenue. Sort of it gets used along transport corridors where there's the expectation of a more active, a little bit more commercial uses at ground floor, a bit more, hopefully a bit more working in place or co-working spaces, a bit of activity that can be related to the Thoroughbred Park activities, but also allows for residential development as well. And so there's the rezoning, which is proposed for Ioani, is using the CZ5 zone. We kind of we know that Canberra Winery is obviously looking to rezone their site, and I think our project team's expectation is that is likely to be looking at a CZ5 zone. It's what Kingston Foreshore is, and so you see in big areas around Bruce where there's sort of there's activity, but it's residential and both are in the same place. And so we're thinking that that's the most appropriate zone for this location. It manages people's expectations a little bit in terms of activity and noise levels and that sort of stuff. So we think that that's probably the best. But within the zone, we also understand that there will need to be some additional planning controls to nuance it a little bit, to limit, so maybe maximise, like a limit on the maximum amount of some commercial uses, so that it doesn't turn into something that we don't want it to be. We don't want it to become another group centre. And take over from some of the commercial things that are happening in other sort of retail centres in the area. So where we're at now and where we're going to is obviously we're still asking for people to provide feedback or comment and ask questions. We are working on now pulling together the planning report that sort of summarises the inputs from the subject matter experts. We'll give that report to the ACT government and they'll circulate it around internally. And obviously we're hoping that they'll accept the planning report that we give them and that will lead to them producing a draft territory plan variation, which will also obviously go out to the community for a period of consultation. So on the next slide, we've got a couple of little boxes that kind of illustrate the pathway. I think when we were here in February, we had this little red dot at the other end of this blue box here. We've shuffled away down to here now. But really we're just kind of flagging that the process from here on is still, it's measured in years in terms of achieving territory plan variations and starting to actually see development on the site. Next steps, pretty much talked about that. We've got a few little loose ends to tie up in terms of interactions on noise and traffic with EPIC and TCCS. Hoping to get our planning report in, or we will get our planning report in May, in June, and then the kind of the baton more or less gets passed over to EPSDD to work with that and use it as a basis for a draft territory plan variation. And then we're up to our questions page.
One thing I might add on that 12 to 15 year project that we're looking at is there's 3,200 dwellings that are currently slated for the site. The thought process is that we don't want to flood the market, of course.
Well, you can stand in front of the camera.
We don't want to flood the market with those dwellings. We want to stagger the process, so it is a long-term project for the club and a long-term project for the community, because we can't have 3,200 dwellings coming to market at any one point in time. We're well in mind of community expectations in that field there. Happy to receive any questions or any feedback.
I've certainly got a question. Is it, are you looking, presumably as part of the territory plan variation process, you'll have to pay to vary the territory plan. You've obviously changed the use conditions. I'm not a planning whiz, so I'm not sure how that process works. So that's kind of the first part of the question. You know, presumably taking it from a NUZ zone to a CZ zone increases its value. But the second thing is this a development that the Canberra Racing Club's looking to do by itself, or are they going to sell the land to a developer or engage someone else to do it? So it's kind of what are the barriers, the financial barriers to getting to where you're going, but then, you know, how are you actually going to bring it to market?
So the first part of the question, you don't really pay to vary the territory plan, but everybody has a Crown lease on their land that tells them what they can use their land for. And so when the territory plan gets changed, the Crown lease doesn't automatically change, and so the Thoroughbred Park will be needing to apply to vary their Crown lease.
Right.
And the variation to the Crown lease is the point that triggers a lease variation charge payment. And so that's when the government captures, notionally 75% of the uplift in the land value goes in lease variation charges. And that depends on what it is you're actually seeking to vary your lease to include.
Yep.
So it's proportional to the number of dwellings or the types of uses that you're seeking.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
On the second part, if we're looking at what option we take for the development, that's not set in stone at the moment. Our board's yet to consider that. We do have a business case that is on the basis of a pure land sale approach, and the numbers stack up on that process, the less riskiest approach. There's obviously a number of different alternatives we can take to that, and we'll be doing that work while the government is considering the territory plan variation before we adopt what model we want to do going forward. It's as much to set us up as well in terms of our long-term future. So we want to be sustainable into the long term to give back to the community long term.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other questions or queries? Kevin's got one, and then we'll go online.
I'm always interested in these consultation processes. How much have you made any changes to anything?
We have. We changed the zoning. If we can just go back to the map. So the major change to this zoning is the most significant change, and it's changing the specific purpose clauses that we're looking at for those two areas. One of the main driving forces behind that was noise. We don't want to change what we do as a general business. That is our core business. But similarly, we don't want to take away from EPIC and what EPIC does and what EPIC does for the community by complaints that our neighbours that we're creating may create for EPIC. So once again, we're creating our neighbours, we want to work with them, and we don't want to take away from EPIC. So that's the most significant change. That's driven by noise. In terms of the actual map itself, there was just a minor reordering of positions, and that's basically on the basis the community have been supportive of the process we've undertaken. We've put in some additional roadways within the complex and access points within the complex, but overall the community supported what we've taken to them.
And do you go out to other professionals and say, this is what we're going to do? What do you think? I mean, do you go to experts somewhere else to evaluate?
That'll be the long-term process. We will be visiting other race clubs, as I mentioned, people like Moonee Valley, Eagle Farm, to take their learnings. But as well, once we decide on what approach we want to take from a board decision, we'll consult appropriately to make sure we get the best outcome. Because once again, as I mentioned, this is to set us up for our long-term future.
Also, that plan's fairly nice. Do another one over there, or no, one online, Darren?
Yeah, so the online, Mark Scarborough is making a comment here, and I think it was in regards to what you were talking about, noise complaints. So he says that's a good point about activities at Epic. Summernats produces significant noise during their events, so residents moving into this facility would need to be aware of this and cannot complain after the fact. This would have to apply to any events at Epic as well as the noise that's generated in this particular development.
Yeah, correct, and that lends it to the point that I just mentioned. We're looking to work with Epic and also set our own limits around the site, so we can't interrupt events at Epic, but also can't interrupt our own events.
There's another comment in from Brad Miller, just general comment about more commercial warehousing, more commercial big warehousing is needed in Mitchell. Personally, I'd add to that and just sort of say, I don't know whether or not I would want to rule out commercial altogether. You're right, maybe you might not want to interfere with certain other regions and Epic, but for example, Gungahlin doesn't have a lot of accommodation in regards to hotels and things. So I think your particular site would lend itself to accommodation really well, considering what's happening at Epic with Summernats and things like that. And they have a similar thing in Bathurst. So if you go to Bathurst 1000, you'll notice right next to it they've got an accommodation, multi-storey accommodation venue there that is really handy for the events that are happening there, because most of the accommodation venues are booked out. So just a thought.
I absolutely agree. Number two there at the point of Brownwick and Flemington Roads is the ideal spot for an accommodation outlet. It is close to Epic. It's also obviously very close to the course, and it's close to the main light rail stop. So
that would be commercial, yes.
It would also have a hotel style accommodation as well as what we're currently looking at for that very reason you just mentioned.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, I mean, it's, I think one of the only useful things I took out of Minister Gentleman's speech on planning on Tuesday was he made the comment that planning changes take a long time. and I think this process is a reminder of that. And certainly when we talk to the Canberra folk, they've been toiling away trying to get their process locked in for a long time as well. So kudos to you guys for persevering with it in the long term, and thanks for coming along tonight.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, so another marathon session from the Community Council this week. Thank you to everybody who's stayed with us online and here. Obviously, the big call out at the moment is have a look at the petition, look at what we're saying, and please sign up. Please share the petition with your friends and your family, colleagues, and make sure it gets widely distributed. We'll continue to actively promote it over the coming weeks on our way to our first 1,000 and then hopefully a second 1,000 number of residents signing up and indicating that they really are pretty keen to see the town centre develop, just like every other town centre develops in Canberra, to be something that really is a hub for the whole community commercially, for servicing employment, delivering the retail options we expect, and supporting the community services that we all ultimately are paying for. So again, thank you to all my colleagues in the Community Council. It's been a big few weeks. I hope you all enjoy our new merchandise and our branding, and we'll be seeing you in June. We've already had 2 or 3 organisations showing interest in coming along, including the Suburban Land Agency, to talk about some of their plans in the Taylor and Moncrief group and local centres and how they might bring those to market and consult with the community, which is great. And also an update from someone else who I can't remember their name on. But thank you very much. I know it's late. We'll see you again in June. Thanks very much.